Nvidia is showing us that it needs to make a very important decision. Are we going to keep squeezing higher, or are we going to see more of a pullback from here? That is truly what we are going to go over today as we get into some stock market analysis, some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and Nvidia, AMD, and Meta going forward. Tesla in there as well. I know I missed it, but what we really have to pay attention to here is this is going to be very telling because Nvidia holds a lot of weight. And so if we want to keep squeezing, we're most likely going to see Nvidia break out of this consolidation, and we're going to get into Nvidia as we go down the line. I just wanted to point out that a lot of stocks look like this, where tomorrow they could be making a big decision whether or not we are going to actually pull back even further or start to head to higher levels with some kind of squeeze again. Starting off with the SPY on the daily chart, we're noticing that the 5 has crossed that 20-day moving average, and that tells us one thing. We have a 90% chance to test top Bollinger, and we have not done that yet. So what would we want to do at this stage? Well, when you do get extended to the upside and you need some kind of pullback, where do you gravitate to? We gravitate towards that 5-day moving average. So at this point, we haven't gotten a full test of that 5-day moving average. Maybe that comes tomorrow, and we actually do keep squeezing later on in the week. We're going to pay attention to this going forward, especially even if we open up a little bit higher, or maybe we open up down at this level. Well, maybe that 5 days is able to catch up and we will go test top Bollinger. So we'll pay attention to that going forward. As I go into the shorter time frames, I just wanted to point out the 30-minute. This is what I'm saying, where Nvidia is kind of telling everyone like, hey, I'm right at my center line. Am I going to go up or am I going to go down? Because that could hold a lot of weight here. And that means, what could we see as far as positivity? Well, we could see this start to rise up, crossing over on this MACD. We're going to talk about that right after we give you guys some daily ranges. Okay. So the upside daily range for tomorrow is going to be 519.82 to the upside, and we do have 514.56 to the downside. So just a little bit lower than today, very sideways price action kind of day, a little drop off, and then we kind of just move sideways the rest of the day. But notice this, we are closing above all the moving averages. So that is a little bit of a good sign. We are seeing these wicks come in anytime we go above this level right here. So what we want to pay attention to is actual confirmations of this move, right? We would look at a 15-minute and things like that. We're going to see some price action there, but the 30-minute curling up into positive territory is your overall signal that, hey, this thing can touch this high or go make a new one. And I think that is very, very possible going into tomorrow as we are in a squeezing environment. And this is our first pullback. What did we say to wait for during this squeeze? Well, don't try to short it too heavy because look at this, it holds up. And I would really think that this buying up is a good sign that we're going to head higher. But notice that in this environment, because we did take out this level over here of about 510, that's what we were leaning towards for us to see, hey, any kind of selling that comes in will have some buyers that try to pick it up. We are in that kind of environment right now. So what do we need to see moving forward? We need this 30-minute to cross up on that MACD and start to head up. Now, if we're going to talk a little bit bearish here and we're going to roll over, that would make sense. Why? Because the 2-hour has been overextended a little bit, right? It's been overextended. It's been a little bit overbought, but nothing too dramatic at this point. So if we were going to head lower here, we got to get this to cross down on this MACD. And we're seeing a few stocks actually do that and give us a few hours worth, a few red bars that are giving us this curl down on this MACD. So we'll go into those. And what we would pay attention to still, remember, if you get outside of these ranges, 68% chance for a bounce. But if we start to curl over and we see that dramatically drop off, maybe with some geopolitical news or some kind of news coming out, the only economic news we have to pay attention to for tomorrow when we are live, we will pay attention to it. The jobless claims data come out tomorrow, so we will pay attention to that and see how the market reacts. As of right now, 2-hour curls over, that's going to be a sign, hey, we might want to pull back into this zone. But if the 30-minute is able to curl up, well, it's in positive territory, which means we are actually still in a positive trend. The Qs, they were able to get past our big zone. And what do we say when we cross through a big zone? This is what we've been saying ever since yesterday, right? We said this live. When we cross through a big zone, you kind of want to gravitate back down into it to touch the top of it, to use it as support to head higher. So you break through resistance. Now you touch in it, you gain some buyers, and now we can head higher as long as that next move is confirmed by our momentum indicators. Right now, the RSI sitting above that center line, not necessarily turning up, and the MACD not curling up into positive territory. So that's going to be your confirmation that we're going to test this high or go make a new one. And I'd really still pay attention to this zone. Now notice this zone, we can draw it out a little bit bigger for the Qs. This is where I think that resistance could actually come in because we do have this overbought reading up here. What if we actually climb up to this area here and we see some selling come in? Well, 30-minute divergence is there, and that is a more likely moment for the 2-hour to curl over. Now I am still paying attention to the 2-hour, and I want to see where that's at as of right now. Well, it has not crossed over. It really looks like it wants to, but note how many times you've maybe taken a trade and then you see it almost about to cross and you take it and then it just goes the other way on you. So that's what we're paying attention to here. So if I'm anywhere near going short in this area, if people went short in this area, still don't advise to do that, but I would really pay attention to that 30-minute. If that 30-minute curls up, you really have no reason to go short in this area until you see some kind of divergence. I would rather see that up in this area up here. Some kind of 30-minute divergence would be nice for some kind of trend reversal or a bigger pullback. Now we want to pay attention to a few levels for tomorrow. What are those new levels we're paying attention to? 442.93 to the upside, and then we have 437.19 to the downside. So just remember, if that 30-minute does curl up, this is all the options market expects for tomorrow. So maybe we do want to digest a little bit throughout the day and then make that move towards the end of the day and see a strong Friday. But we'll have to see from here. See if Nvidia is breaking through, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But if this 2-hour curls down, hey, we might want to go deeper into this zone, maybe even touch our trend line before we actually buy back up in this area. Now, Apple was one of the stocks able to curl over on its 2-hour and looking a little flaggy here. So overall, what I'm paying attention to for the for Apple is if we're going to go lower, yeah, test this zone. What do? We break through an important zone, we touch the top of it, and then we can go a little bit higher. Now that would lead us into this zone up here. So I want to see if we head higher, what could form above me. And right now you do have that 30-minute crossing, right? You see that 30-minute crossing, but you're not necessarily seeing strength from that crossing. You want to see a strong bar with that crossing, not these little trickling up kind of things. You really want to see a strong break of that trend, right? A strong break of that trend, and then we could say, hey, yeah, this is going positive at this moment, testing the high or going to make a new one. The cool part is if you're part of Patreon, you know exactly how high Apple is priced in to go this week. And if we do see some kind of divergence up here, we will be notifying you that on Patreon, because this will be an area to pay attention to. This is where a bigger pullback can happen. Now, if we're going to see that bigger pullback right away, that's perfectly fine. I have a zone below that I can pay attention to, and maybe that beats up this 2-hour a little bit more. And I know I'm bouncing around, but you kind of have to bounce around in a market like this. Maybe that 2-hour is going to beat down a little bit closer to that center line or something like that, right? We're going to beat down, but anytime this curls up, you will get that second move if we see that bearishness come in. As of right now, I want to tell you right now, I am leaning towards that bull side just because we are in a squeezing environment. We're above some key levels, even for Apple at this moment. So I believe that sellers will be buying these dips in this environment. Doesn't mean I'm not open to downside. Look how Tesla reacted, and doesn't Apple look a lot like Tesla at this moment, right? If you would point out Apple and Tesla together, you would say Apple is right here. So what can happen from this area? We can learn from this. The 2-hour is getting close to the center line. We're outside, right? That weekly expected move did get tested. Very, very cool thing right there. I put that on this video. 170.26 to the downside. Now that's not exact range, right? But I know that it was pretty much right on that wick down here. So very, very cool to see those come into play, and we do gravitate towards those levels. So what am I paying attention to for Tesla here? Well, Tesla, kind of a rough spot because you're still way down in negative territory. So if you want to see positivity here, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So at this moment for Tesla, you would mainly not really want to look at a 30-minute. You'd more so look at a 2-hour and say, if we curl up, well, guess what? I'm right by that center line. So if we curl up at any point from this and take back that important 180.92 level, that could be the moment. I'm going to get rid of this weekly range so no one's confused. This is not the weekly range right here. But if we take that back, that would be a very bullish sign. You'd probably get this to curl up on the MACD. When you curl up on the MACD on the 2-hour in positive territory, what usually happens? Well, first off, we're going to test this level right here. Then we're going to test the ties, and then we can go make a new high if that continues to go into positive territory. So at this moment, if we were going to head higher, I would really be paying attention to 185.25. I think this level right here will be very important. Left, head, we go up and we make some kind of right shoulder, retesting 180.92. I think that would be a solid way higher. And the reason I'm only mainly talking about higher for Tesla is because if we're going to see something more dramatic, that's all you would experience here. So if you want to talk about how Tesla would actually head lower from here, most likely this 30-minute gets close to that center line and it curls down. As of right now, it is in a negative trend on the 30-minute. So that tells me if I see any kind of build up towards this center line, this wants to cross over at any time, this could be the next move down, and that move might be dramatic as it would take you outside of that weekly expected move. So pay attention to Tesla. We really want to pay attention to tomorrow's price action, as tomorrow will be a decisive day. Amazon, remember we were talking about this on the daily scale. If you want to talk about that or learn about the daily scale for Amazon, go look at the previous 2 videos. We're not going to talk about that today. Mainly what we're talking about here is look at this right by the center line, wants to make a move higher. We have a weekly range on Patreon, which is in the links in the description. And this is going to be very, very powerful if it can get that strong break upward, right? We need a strong move upward right here to give us a good green bar that convinces us, hey, I can come test this high. I can go make a new one. That's what I would pay attention to for Amazon, but remember that could be short-lived and we might create some kind of divergence up here. So if we're not going to do that right now, then we might have some more work to do. We might want to go negative for a moment. This looks kind of flaggy in here. Okay, so if we're going to head lower from here, I have my weekly expected moves to pay attention to. And then after that, I can just look at a 2-hour. You see the 2-hour already did roll over here. And so we could see more construction in this overall pullback. We could see some kind of move down to this gap fill. And then maybe we want to base out from there. I'm paying attention to my weekly ranges. But anytime this 2-hour wants to curl up, I can get bullish on it. But if that starts to flash crash and go negative, that's where I would start to be a little bit more negative at this moment. As of right now, I still believe we are in an environment where pullbacks will be met up with some buying pressure, so I'm paying attention to that going forward. All right, and now it is time for Nvidia. This one's going to be very, very important. Get your notebooks out, take some notes, do whatever you got to do to point out a lot of stuff going on right in this area. The 2-hour was able to curl down, so a potential for a more dramatic pullback, maybe to test a trend line, could be good. Right, we could come all the way down to this area too to fill this gap. So we can see that downside because this 2-hour is pointing down and doesn't look like it wants to fully turn up yet. But look at this fight here between bulls and bears at this moment. So whoever wins this is going to see some kind of break to the upside or downside, right? If you wanted to say, hey, cup and handle, things like that could be going on right here. But as of right now, the important thing to look at, the 30-minute. The 30-minute is very, very important, and you can see how good this looks. We actually posted this to Patreon, and I know we're starting to sell off a little bit here, but we mentioned how we see a big swing, then we get a medium, then we get a medium, then we get a small, then we get a small, then we get smaller, and then we have to pay attention to when this actually breaks. So if we are going to see buying pressure come in, we're expecting this to break here, curl up on this MACD down here. That would really tell you, hey, the next big move is coming if I can get a definitive, decisive bar outside of this, a clean break, right? We don't want to fizzle out of this and then just see that drop and then see this just cross over and go negative. That would be a bad thing. No, we want to see a strong bar from Nvidia being decisive with this next move and telling us, hey, I am going to go higher. And then we have to pay attention if it does for some kind of 30-minute divergence. That would really tell you that there's more work to be done and maybe a pullback that's a little bit more significant is coming for Nvidia. But at this moment, you would say, okay, curls up, positive territory. The thing about this MACD, though, is it's right at that center line. So if this just curls over and goes negative, you're probably going to break the downside here and you might head a little bit lower. So we'll pay attention to these things, but keep Nvidia in mind. Even if you're not trading Nvidia, I think this is a very important stock to watch in the morning. And that's why we are going to be keeping track of it live tomorrow morning. So join us for our live show as we do go live at the open every single day. What can we read into with AMD? Well, AMD and Nvidia, okay, we can pay attention to both of these and what's happening right now. Well, you see that buying pressure comes in and the selling is here, and you see the buyers trying to keep this up at this moment, but not able to confirm the next move higher. We're seeing that drift down in the post market here, but we want to pay attention to tomorrow, see what that data tells us early on in the morning, and then we can say, okay, if this curls up at any point, then we can test this high, we can go make a new one, and I'm really liking this level of 160.87. I've talked about this a few times, but you can really see the structure of this left shoulder. Remember how I talked about Nvidia creating a divergence that gets a more dramatic pullback? Well, look at AMD. AMD giving you that up here with that upward move would give you some kind of divergence, and maybe that pullback is significant before we get some big data next week, right? We have big data drops coming next week. We'll talk about those things live tomorrow, but as of right now, what if this was going to set up? So in order for this to set up, this is just a scenario. This has not proven to be playing out just yet. I want to point that out. We have not gotten any kind of strong green impression on this histogram down here for the MACD. If we can get that, then I would be confident in saying, hey, yeah, we'll test the high, go make a new one. But be very, very careful. And that's why we trade like water on this channel. We trade like water, which means we are always moving our positions and always paying attention to the price action. We're never going to say something has to be bullish forever, right? We said in this area, a pullback is likely. We go a little bit higher. We saw the 15-minute divergence at this level. Now we're getting that pullback. This is the moment where we are beat down on the 30-minute, and we could see that squeeze even higher. If this is going to go down from here, first of all, I think that will be brief. I think it'll be brief. We'll touch this zone and see some kind of reaction. But if it isn't brief, we're going to pay attention to this 2-hour. Look at this, the 2-hour. You notice that this one did not curl over. And that is a very key thing to remember here. This is a very good thing for the chart behavior, because if this actually did curl over into negative territory, that's exactly where you'd be. You'd be continuing a negative trend, which means you test this low or you go make a new one. So if we do curl over early in the morning and that does not buy right back up, this 2-hour bar does print negative at this point, you would say, hey, I have a good shot to go test this low or go make a new one. And that's why I would pay attention to my weekly expected moves going on into tomorrow if we see some kind of breakdown. Meta is one that I'm very, very worried about. This is some great buying up, yes, but it is starting to fade out a little bit. And the reason I'm going to talk about that is, first of all, I'm going to point out the 2-hour here. Still close enough to negative territory, but I think a retest of 453.08 is coming. Now, I want to see if that's going to be right away or if it's going to be in the future, a little bit in the future, because right now, what am I seeing on the 30-minute? Well, I'm seeing some big divergences here, okay? There are divergences at this level, and this is what you want to pay attention to in a short squeeze. Not necessarily these little pullbacks. You want to see these divergences. That's where you can actually pay attention for a bigger pullback. And as of right now, what is Meta doing? It is showing you a triple divergence on the RSI and just a simple one divergence here on the MACD, which is telling you, hey, there is likelihood for a pullback. Now, that is not coming to fruition right now. So I want to pay attention to a 15-minute. I think a 15-minute would be very powerful. And if you're part of Patreon, you know why I'm hesitant in this area, why I'm hesitant and why there is resistance up in this area, okay? If you're part of Patreon, you know exactly why. I don't even need to mention it. But we can look at the 15 and show you guys this meaningful divergence right here that shows up on the MACD and RSI at the same time. You guys wonder why I like them at the same time. This is a signal to pay attention to because you could experience some kind of pullback. Now, if that pullback is brief like it is right now, maybe we pop up one more time. I think this would be a moment to pay attention to Meta, and it might see some kind of pullback. Not saying it has to crash down or anything like that, just a meaningful pullback. I would like a retest of 453.08. I think that would be a great level to retest at this moment because it's been very, very important. You notice once we get above that, sure, we get some selling to almost retest it, and then boom, we just start going off to the races with this move, staying above our 20 on the 15-minute here. So overall, we want to pay attention because there could be one more bullish move, but that might be the bull trap for the bigger pullback that is coming early on next week. Microsoft, I did want to talk about because this is a play that I took, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not always winning in this market. Now, sometimes I am forced to get out of a position, and you guys know that I took a position here, and what happened next? Well, we used the 30-minute, right? I said the 30-minute could cross into positive territory. I saw that 15-minute cross, and now I want to pay attention to how I could get screwed out of a move. So first of all, I can still pay attention to Microsoft. I can still pay attention to upside in Microsoft because this 30-minute is not fully negative at this point. We're at the center line of the RSI. And yes, we're getting some selling pressure after market. It got not the best news towards the end of the day, right? So we can see right here, Microsoft to shut Africa Development Center in Nigeria. And then we got a few other things as well. So it didn't get the best news at the end of the day, but that's okay because the charts are going to tell me what's going to happen next. And right now, if this 30-minute does curl up into positive territory, we could see a big move up towards maybe 416. So 416 where I'm paying attention, and that's where a divergence could set up, and maybe that's a more meaningful pullback. We'll have to talk about head and shoulders and things like that as well from that area because we're always open to multiple scenarios. Okay, that's what trading like water means. It means I'm always open and I'm always creating scenarios that even go against me. So I know if that happens, I need to get out of a trade. So what convinced me to get out of this trade at this moment? The 15-minute. When this 15-minute rolled negative, I was out of this trade. Okay. So that's something to really pay attention to. Once the 15-minute rolls negative, that means this negative trend can continue, and I can test this low. I can go make a new one, and I don't want to mess around with that. That's what the charts are telling me. That 30-minute has not crossed up. I don't have that confirmation. So on this bar right here, we actually went negative, and this is where I exited my position because I am not going to play around when a stock tells me, hey, I might head lower here. I have a good opportunity to head lower, so there's no reason to go long here until this MACD curls back up. So if this is able to curl up, it's okay. It's right by positive territory. It's just being risk managed at this point. So if that wants to curl up, I can get right back in this move. That 30-minute can cross up, and guess what? We could pop up to 412, see that base out, and maybe we get a little head and shoulders to actually head higher from this move. If we're going to continue down, you know what's going to happen? We're probably going to see this 2-hour curl over, right? This hasn't even curled over yet, and that is a very big deal. If that curled over, this would be a little bit more probability towards more of a pullback. But since this hasn't crossed over just yet, we have a little bit more time left to see if that 15-minute and 30-minute want to curl up and go positive from here. If this is going to curl down right now, well, then I'll pay attention to that. I'll see this curl over on the 2-hour. Maybe I even take a little play down, but I'm not trying to fight against anything here. But this is a pretty cool area because this is exactly where I thought that resistance could come in. I sold at about here because I did play this to the upside. And congratulations if you were able to make money on this move. Now we have that pullback, and we have to see if that 30-minute is actually going to be able to curl up into positive territory as it is sitting right at that center line. You're seeing this on a lot of stocks. Google itself getting close to that center line. Maybe it wants to curl up for another move higher, and this is what we're paying attention to. Remember, this is exactly where you would want that cup and handle to go to form at this point. And now we can see it breaking down to lower levels, but it hasn't gone negative yet. So we're not fully worried about this move till we take out this low, because once you take out that low, you're most likely going negative, and this is going to be a little bit more dramatic, maybe an ABC pattern or something like that. So what do I want to pay attention to with Google? Pretty much similar things. Curling up on the MACD, keeping it very, very simple today, and then a 2-hour crossing, and guess what? That was able to cross down, so you had to be a little bit more worried about Google at this point, because this could be constructing still, and maybe this 2-hour wants to dip down significantly. We can pay attention to our weekly ranges, right? Things like that, but at this moment, you could see some kind of bigger pullback with Google and then see that turn back up. This will be a confirmation that the next move's higher. If this is going to go fully negative, that's when we could test this low, even go make a new one for Google. One thing I noticed about HYG is it was also able to curl over on its 2 hours, and some stocks haven't yet. So that could mean we have more construction to happen here. So I want to pull up a 30-minute just to show, hey, this thing could curl up into positive territory, but if it starts to lose this gap level right here, this gap support, that's not going to be a good sign. We could get some kind of cup, some kind of small handle. Maybe that doesn't even happen and we just start to gap lower. Remember, this is the smart money, so we'll be paying attention to this as well tomorrow. If HYG actually makes a downward move while the overall stock market is going up, we will pay attention to that tomorrow. They're moving pretty in tandem at this moment. So this downside move is confirmed by HYG at this point, and we have to see if that is going to break down further and see any difference between the SPY going into tomorrow. Now, the last thing I did want to talk about was volatility, and actually I'm going to touch on the dollar for a second. Volatility on the 30-minute. It is starting to pile up. You're seeing a bunch of divergences. This is the time where you want to pay attention to volatility. This is the time, because if that curls up, you're going to notice it's right by that center line. This, when it's close to the center line, able to go positive, that's really when you want to pay attention to volatility, because it means the downward trend could shift over and turn into a positive trend, which means volatility will be scaling up. So a point to pay attention to at this moment, but we could go either way as of tomorrow. So it's very important to be on our toes and continue to trade like water. Let's talk about the dollar for a sec. One thing we were bringing to your attention was the dollar. The dollar, remember we were saying, yeah, the SPY's making an upward move, but people are selling into this move, so a pullback is coming. Now, at this moment, we wouldn't be overly worried about this, because right now, what are you getting? You're getting a breakdown of these important levels in here. And what are you doing? You're testing those levels. Remember that 105.65, very important level for some kind of retest, and that's what we get at this moment. And I just wanted to show you the 2 hour, because look at that. The 2 hour is way up in this area. You don't have divergences at this base or anything like that. So if we are going to see some kind of big bullish move, well, this might be the bullish move that comes, and then we see some kind of 2 hour divergence down here for the dollar. I am paying attention to this. If the market continues to go higher while the dollar goes higher. We will point it out during the live show because that means that someone is selling into this upward move. And you guys know that was actually me a little bit ago. Now we've gotten that pullback in the overall market and we could move higher. So we'll pay attention if more selling comes and the market continues to head higher, or if the dollar is just going to really back off and this was just some kind of retest and we're going to get really bullish right now. So the main takeaway here is tomorrow is going to be a very decisive day, and I highly, highly suggest, even if you are not trading it, that you pay attention to what Nvidia does in the morning, and we will be paying attention to it with you live tomorrow morning. We are live every single day, so you know that, and thank you guys for liking and subscribing, right? We're almost to 5,000. I really appreciate it. We have such a good community that is really growing every single day, and it is fun to see, and it's awesome to see people taking more ownership and really asking questions that are dedicated to learning. Not asking, should I buy? Should I sell? More like, hey, is this looking like a setup? Is this a setup that you would pay attention to? And I think that that is very powerful to see in this community, a community that is actually dedicated to learning, not just making money super, super quick, trying to become millionaires. We know that the fastest way to make money in this market is the slow way, and trading like water can really help us get there. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, subscribing. If you want to learn about this stuff, there is a course down in the link in the description. It is only $200 right now, and there's even a payment plan to get it for $50 a month. So I thought that was important so that everyone can really learn in this type of environment and get better at trading over time. That way you're ready for any kind of market so you can make money in any market. And I think that's the overall goal here. So thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to streaming with you tomorrow, and I'll see you later. Peace. Oh yeah, good luck trading tomorrow.